Another area is auditory training. Remember, again, we've recognized this deficit in their receptive language. So, one area we focus on is auditory training so they can increase their understanding of spoken language. So, we know that this language problem is associated with autism. So, auditory integration training was developed to address those language concerns. Now, research has demonstrated mixed results, and this is considered highly experimental, but it is an area of focus because they're trying to figure out how to basically address that receptive language problem that we see associated with autism. Another one is facilitated communication. This is another controversial intervention. This one uses a lot of physical prompting, which is it's a very restrictive form of prompting, is to actually put your hands on someone, and so that's part of the reason it's controversial. But in this one, a facilitator provides resistance to the movement of the individual with the person they're working with in order to steady the person with specific touches. But research eventually has demonstrated so far that these students were not actually completing the task independently. They just developed a dependence on that physical prompt. So, an example, if you were trying to get the child to, what do I want to say, get their backpack at the end of the day. And so the teachers told everyone to get their backpack and your kid's not moving. Maybe they know that when you touch them on the shoulder, it means stand up. And then they start going toward the Legos instead of the backpacks. And so you tap them on the shoulder again and kind of push them toward the direction. So these are not aggressive touches. But the idea is if you're still prompting them so much physically, are they really learning to understand these prompts, these verbal prompts, these verbal instructions any better? Are they literally just walking around waiting for you to push them to the right location? And so I think there's a good idea behind it. Whenever I'm speaking of these things and their limitations, it's never out of a boastful attitude or thinking that anyone's totally crazy. I think when you look at these theories and see where they're born out of, it's born out of wanting to help, right? And saying how can we help this area of deficit? But it's not a highly used method. At least in my years of practice, it's not been one that I have used or seen used. We just want to overall, as we're making these instructional decisions and we're part of this team that's using these different approaches, we just have to remember that although these are really can be difficult and complex decisions, they're really critical for the student. And so they're worth your time and effort. We want to consider their current communication ability, both what they can understand and what they can produce. We want to consider their developmental history. We want to consider what's been done before, if anything, and their success with that. And of course, we want to know what that parent's preference is. They are the true expert on their child. As always, email me with questions or concerns about what we kind of covered in this chapter. Now, this slide, I don't necessarily know that your language sample is due by the Monday that you're reviewing this, because in the accelerated course, you kind of go at double the rate that we do during a normal semester. So disregard that. Look on your course outline for when your language sample analysis is due. But make sure you're staying on track, finishing chapter 9, doing the quiz, finishing chapter 10, and preparing for that lecture and preparing for that quiz. And then if you haven't already by this point, this is halfway through, you need to be making sure you're looking at that final project, that HLP presentation and paper, and emailing me with questions or a time to meet up, because I don't want that project to sneak up on you. And I'll see you for chapter 10.